This is That One Audition with Alicia Oxy. I am so excited to have you here. I always do a deep dive with everybody. And girl, your deep dive, you are a full-on chameleon. 100%. Start to finish. Chameleon. I love that every single role that you jump into is essence and fragments of yourself, but also distinctly different. So I want to know in the research too, so you were just sitting at home when you were little and had to sit in front of the TV for a while because of a breathing machine that you needed to work with? And that's how we became obsessed with this? Tell me, a little girl in Israel, were you watching Israeli television or were you watching?
First of all, thank you so much. You're so sweet. I guess I was watching a little bit of everything. I had pretty gnarly asthma as a kid, and I had to sit with an analyzer. Is that how you say it in English? And it was like this big machine that you inhale steam to your lungs and it opens it up. And you'd sit there for 45 minutes at a time. And the best way to pass the time was watching TV. And we had a lot of Israeli television that my dad really liked watching with me. And then we also watched a lot of American cinema. Only like the big blockbusters would make it to Israeli television. I remember watching Trading Places with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
It gave me nightmares that I would become homeless and penniless and then different Man in Black and The Fifth Element, like stuff that my dad liked to watch, obviously.
I was just going to say, not so much kid-related stuff. I was
My mom would have fights with him over this because you can't watch this in front of her. And he's like, what do you want me to do? She's here. And I would just sit there and I'm like, just back and forth. And I loved watching the grown-up stuff. And I would always say, I'm fine. It's not a problem. And then I would crawl into their bed at night because I couldn't sleep, having nightmares.
I could imagine. So then are they starting to realize, oh, she is really enjoying storytelling?
You know, when you grow up in Israel, making movies in America, it doesn't seem possible. Like my mom described me coming to her and saying, I want to be an actress in America. It was always specifically, I wanted to make American cinema and TV. That's what I wanted because I was really drawn to that. And she said it sounded like I was asking her to be an astronaut. Like, how am I going to help you with this? I can't sign you up for there's no be an American movie star school in Israel. What do I do with this child? But at the same time, you're not going to tell your kid you can't be an astronaut. You have to support their dream and you want to encourage them and make them believe that anything is possible, even though you think they are out of their goddamn minds. So it was a balancing act. And I think my mom is more of a mental supporter and my dad is like actuality. Like, okay, how do we do this? Who do we have out there? Who can we call? How do we do this?
So how does that proceed? Because 17, you leave Israel. So you don't do the army in Israel, right? So you leave, go to New York and start doing off Broadway. Now, anybody that's listening to this in any parts of the world right now, okay, so how do I do that?
Okay, so here's the real scoop. When I came to America, I was still a tourist. I wasn't allowed to work. I think I had $2,000 that I had saved up from working back home. And the first thing I needed to do was get a job just to survive. I don't come from a wealthy family and I wasn't supported by any means. So that was job number one. Job number two was to get a green card to be allowed to work in the States. And then job number three was to start understanding what this craft really was, because I had no knowledge of acting whatsoever. And this is we're going to keep it real. So At some point when I moved to LA, I had to come up with a resume and I had written there that I did off Broadway in New York, but I really didn't.
Fake it till you make it, right? Fake it till you make it.
This is the first time anyone has brought that up to me. And I don't know, like, I really don't know where that had stayed like around, because I've read that in several places and I've never been able to come out with it. But the truth is, all I did in New York City was just struggle to survive, keep my head above water, trying to not go back home with my tail between my legs.
Yeah. And thanks for being transparent about that. I think the business has changed so much. When I first moved out here as well, it's like, you judge the resume just ever so slightly. Right. Before IMDb, before there could be tests to be like, what exactly did you do in Israel? What did you do in New York? So I'm curious, was the judging to get into Lee Strasberg? So is that correct that you got a scholarship to Lee Strasberg, or is that also internet fodder?
Oh, thank God. The scholarship was something I earned. Thank goodness. But it was for anything. You're like, okay, what do I do? I'm an actor. Okay, you need a headshot and a resume. That's what you needed at the time. I don't even know what you need these days. Like when people come to me and they ask me, I'm like, Google it. I don't know. Everything's so different. But at the time, you needed a resume and a headshot. What that meant, I didn't know. You Google it, and then you're like, I haven't done anything. I didn't have education. I studied ballet and contemporary dance. Like, I didn't know what to write. So I looked up different variations of other actresses that I looked up to and put it on there. That's the last time I thought of it until just now.
I just love how you land on a show called Imposters. And there's this moment of being an imposter to get to where we need to go. There's a certain resourcefulness, right? Nobody desires you until you're that person. In order to be that person, we almost have to fake people into believing we're that person. That is the true form of acting and being a chameleon. So was Lee Strasberg for you to get the tuition, for you to have the scholarship, was that the judging of the resume there, or did you go audition? What's the process for being basically sponsored to come out and study?
So with Lee Strasberg, it was so intimidating because it's like one of the greatest schools of our time. And I had this dream of walking in there, and I remember just feeling really dizzy, just walking through those halls and realizing like the legends who have studied in those schools. And I have such appreciation to those teachers. Like they're the old school, right? Like my Mark Marna, who was one of my teachers, worked with Dustin Hoffman, and he would bring up examples of Dusty in class and how he was never lazy. And he would bring him up as an example when we were slacking off. And I just felt so lucky to get to be there in those classes. But it was expensive as shit. I could not afford studying there. And so I remember they cut me a deal when I first arrived. They didn't really know what my capabilities were and how seriously I was going to take it. And I started school. I paid like a very small and gracious amount. They were gracious about giving me like a small amount to pay. And I started school there. And then I took one class with Mrs. Strasberg, who is a legend. And it was like an intensive course that I did with her. And after performing one scene that I had worked on for the entire course, we were talking about whether or not I was to continue my studies there. And I said, I'm not sure I can afford to. And she said, okay, I understand. It's a struggle out there. It's a hustle. And then after the class was over, she came up to me and she said, you're never going to have to worry about school ever again. And I was like, not sure what she meant by that. And then after I left, I was about to leave, and the front desk girl came up to me and she said, Mrs. Strasberg said to sign you up for the next semester. And I was like, I don't know if I can afford to. And she said, no, you're covered. You're invited to study here until the end of time. And I couldn't believe it until I did it. And I've been very welcome in that school ever since.
Oh, wow. It's always like those little fans along the way or little stepping stones where you're like, okay, I'm headed in the right direction. Okay, I'm being supported, which I feel like part of that's what this podcast is, hearing where other people were supported. So then you can see those green lights, as Matthew McConaughey puts it, those green lights where you're like, okay, I'm going forward. I'm doing this. Yeah. So I'm curious if in New York, if you were able to get your green card or a visa. So then once you land in LA, you start with this incredible training. How are you able to start going out to auditions? So I'm really curious if you don't mind sharing how you walked through that process.
Here's the thing. It's a long, lengthy, boring process. It's different for everybody. Everyone's situation is different. You have to do the research and understand what you can apply for, what you can afford, and what the country will let you do. I wish I had a simpler answer, but the truth is, it's also very different today than what it was back in the day.
Yeah.
And it will continue to change. I feel like today there's discussion. They actually allowed, I believe they allowed for, let's say specifically people from Israel to come and get their green card immediately. But our government haven't allowed and approved that yet. So it's just ever changing and evolving. And I would say my best advice is really do your research. But at the end of the day, I always say this. Once you make that decision that this is what you want, you're going to make it happen no matter what. You jump into the water and you start swimming and you figure it out. But you have to make that decision. As long as you start like debating it and second guessing, it's never going to like magically appear on your doorstep. Oh, she's approved. We want her. It didn't work like that for me. Maybe for different people, but not for me.
Not for you. So then I'm curious. Okay. So you do, Mrs. Strasberg is amazing. Now at this point, do you have representation? So how are you taking what you're learning and putting it into practical professional use?
So I had started just going out, trying to meet as many people from the industry as I could. There was like the Israeli Film Festival that was happening. My aunt was like, I'm going. I was like, I'm fucking going with you. And I went and I thought I looked fabulous. Now, when I'm looking at those photos, I'm like, how did anyone talk to me? And I got to meet all these like up and coming actresses and actors from Israel. And they were working actors. So I was like, come to me, tell me everything. And one of them became a really good friend of mine, Asaf Cohen. And he was represented at the time with Todd Justice, who was his agent. And I started asking questions and he was like, listen, we're at an event. Let's get coffee and chill down, simmer down. And I'll tell you everything I know. And he did. We had Starbucks and we talked business, and he told me you need to get a resume and a headshot and get on IMDb. And I did. And then he gave me this great advice. He said, what he did back in the day was he started interning as in a casting office. Did you do that?
Yeah. I think it's a thing that's a bummer that the world is the way it is right now because it's invaluable. Where did you end up interning?
So I immediately sent out everyone and their mothers, and I got into Patrick Rush.
Yeah.
Who was awesome. And I interned there for 6 months. And you're so right. It's so valuable. And it taught me so much of what I know and what I still do to this day.
Share. So let's share with everybody, since they can't do this experience. What were some of your biggest takeaways that you still use today?
Okay. So when you work at a casting office, obviously like the secret hope is that they think you're so wonderful and that something that they're casting is going to need exactly the new Israeli curly haired girl, which sometimes happen, but most of the time, the real value you gain from it, at least for me, is just being able to witness the process of casting and auditioning from the other side. I had a huge fear of going into an audition. I would just get really nervous, super sweaty, say the wrong things, get really awkward. And when I was there, I would witness their conversations of like how nervous they are to get this role cast already, or all the ins and outs of all these things that go down and why someone gets cast or gets miscast or has to be released or we need another one. And there's so much pressure on their end. And all they really want for you is for you to get the job. Like they are rooting for you to blow their minds and get it. So I think seeing that kind of took off the pressure of it, made it like it turned the room into a more inviting room. That's number one. Number two, I was actually in the room with actors, reading with them and taping them and seeing them. And I could tell there were these actors who were coming in like slouchy and nervous and unsure and just timid by the whole process. And it is like dating. Like that's not sexy. That's not appealing in any way. And there were these actors who would come in and just cool, calm, collected. Let me show you something amazing. And I was like, okay, let's go. And it just made it very simple. Like as long as you are confident and you're coming in to have a good time and just a good show, you're going to get it.
You're going to make the fans. It's all about letting them know that they can trust you. Absolutely. They can really be okay putting you on set or working you through that. Because also when people don't realize when you get to set, we're so focused on getting the job that you walk into a room, you audition for a casting director or several people are in the room. But when you get on set, it's hundreds of people. It's hundreds of people now looking at you and you have to hit that mark, the lights here. So they need to make sure that you feel like you are ready.
Yeah.
To have that because that's money. If you don't hit your mark, if you aren't able to deliver on the day, that's cost effective for the production all around.
Exactly. And it's when you audition and when I say you're going to get it, I mean, you're going to get it like you win the room. That's what I mean. You might not be right for this. You'll get called back in for something different. You're going to win them over. And that's really the only thing that matters. And it's not about winning them. It's winning for you. It's I won that day. I did what I came here to do.
Yes. Okay. So I have to ask, what is that one audition? When I say that for you, which audition comes to mind?
I was thinking about this today because there wasn't really anything to prepare for this interview. You've
been preparing for years.
True that. It's an interesting name for a show. I think it's very smart to talk about that one audition, right? That changed it all. Two come to mind, but I'll give you the main one. Undoubtedly was obviously my Imposters.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to get to that one. I'm curious what you think before you go into that amazing story. What were the stepping stones to get you that audition? Or was it just, it's another day. Here comes this lead of a show. The whole show's around me. Okay, great. You'd done some really great things leading up to it. You had been a lead of a show on a couple of other things. Here's this nice little rise from underemployed to gang related, Sons of Anarchy, Castle, and Last Ship. We're like, Prison Break. It's not like you were like, so when Imposters comes in, are you like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to lead my own show.
So here's the thing. Like I came out of my mom's womb, like ready to be the star of my show. Okay. That's who I was. I came out like that. All right. It's exhausting to be me, but it's more exhausting to be around me. I'm telling you right now. But then you realize very quickly that in order to get to that place, there's going to be a lot of stepping stones. And I was very grateful for all those opportunities. And I loved every one of them. But in each and every one, I was ready for the spotlight. And I had left a show. I don't know if people know this, but like on the Last Ship, they asked me to stay for another season. And I said, I need the spotlight. And I literally, I said, I'm Beyonce. I don't do backup vocals. And
okay, then I need to dig into this a little bit more, because was your team like, okay, you're crazy? Or
I think they didn't say I was crazy, because they also have been seeing and my work and how hard I hustle and like how much I wanted this. And I had proven to them that I'm capable of all these different things. But at the same time, it's like, girl, like everyone in Hollywood wants their own show. What makes you? And that was a solid show that was running for a long time. And it was a really generous offer. But I just felt like I needed to take a gamble on myself. And I did. And I walked away from that meeting and I had a nervous breakdown the next day. And I like ran back into the office and I was like, I made a huge mistake. I take it all back. I want the job. And they were like, no, sweetie, you were right. Like you can do it. Get out of here, literally. And I had gone into 8 solid months of auditioning without getting any jobs. And then Imposters came around.
okay, so I want to do a little mental health check here. So 8 months of and you're Beyonce, and I'm sure killing auditions and then not having that validation loop of the booking. I'm sure some of these things in here might have been offers, right? After the last ship was Prison Break.
Prison Break was offer. Castle was offer. The Last Ship was offer.
Yeah, because you're in this zone where people can see what you can do. You are really, a lot of these I felt like were really playing to your strengths, your age, your capability to be such a chameleon. I can see why these are offers. Now, I'm wondering, as a person then you're going up to bat and not knocking it out of the park, where does your mental health stand with that? Or again, Beyonce just needs the right light.
You know what? I feel like if you were to sit down with Queen Bee, she would probably tell you, listen, this is all Sasha Fierce. If you don't know, it's her alter ego, which we all have to lean into from time to time. And that means my mental health was down the drain. I had just gone through a crazy breakup, and I took this leap of faith on myself. I had turned down a shit ton of money. I told everyone in my team, I got this. And then for 8 solid months, I'm striking out and I'm beginning to think this was the biggest mistake. I am not worthy. What was I thinking? I could never lead my own show. The world isn't ready for an Israeli lead actress, and all those things that come into mind when you're insecure and things aren't really working the way you were hoping they would.
Yeah. So what do you do to gear back up? Or does when Imposters come through, you're like, okay, this is just another crack. Man, if it doesn't set you up for being the chameleon that you are, it plays to every strength of yours.
Thanks. I think when I got the audition, I remember reading it and calling my manager and saying, I'm not going in for this. There's no way I'm going to get it. And I remember saying that because in my mind, I have been getting so many, she's too ethnic. She's not ethnic enough. She's too dark. She's dark, but we're not really sure what she is. And all these different feedbacks. And when I read it, I saw a girl who needed to pass for a plethora of looks and ethnicities and accents. And even though I knew I could do it, I didn't think people out there would believe me as that or cast me as that. I wasn't convinced that they were convinced. And my team got on the phone and they were like, listen, it's too good for you to pass up. There's no reason you shouldn't go in for this. It's a great role. You can crush it. Go and crush it. And I had a night. It was the next day. The first pre-read was the next day. And it was like 7 scenes or something crazy like that.
I had to ask because also since she is such a chameleon and she changes identities, it's a con artist. For anybody that hasn't watched, oh my God, go back and revisit this. And Paul Edelstein has done the show a couple of times and he created the show. So here we have an actor who's also a chameleon, had created this show. I am so curious. Yeah, like you said, 7 scenes. It had to have been a lot of different characters for you to take on to show them you could do it. Did you coach on it? Go walk me through it all.
Okay, so I wasn't coaching at the time because you actually got to go in the room. So I only coach now when I have a tape as I'm taping. But at the time, I would just work on the material on my own. And I was exaggerating. It wasn't 7 scenes, but it was 3 very long scenes and many pages. And I just remember one of the scenes was Ava, who was Belgium, and I needed to do an accent for her. And I don't do a Belgian accent just like off the top of my head. So I had to really work on that. So I watched a bunch of interviews with Belgian speaking people all through the night and worked on that really long monologue. The second scene was of Maddie, which was in the airport, and it was like with my natural American accent. And the third one was Saffron, which I wanted to do a hint of a whispery voice that really reminded me of Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, yes.
And so I had those 3 scenes, and you could only choose 2, but whenever you can choose, I always work on all of them. And I always throw that at the end. I'm always like, I actually have the third one ready too, just so you know.
Yeah. Because you want to see more from Beyonce. You want all the tracks from Beyonce. Let's be real.
Yeah, it's just good measure. It's just like a little acapella. Just have them on the edge of their seats. And sometimes it works. And sometimes they're like, no, we asked for 2. Get the fuck out.
Okay, thank you. You're like, no, I'm going to keep going. I prepared more.
I'm just saying it can backfire. You got to take risks.
So you have one night to prepare this. Are you up all night learning this Belgium thing? Okay. So, and then you go, are they like, okay, let's see the third scene?
I remember coming in and there were so many girls auditioning for this. We weren't even in a room. It was like the room was packed and then people were outside, it was like in the studio, like outside, sitting all around. It was the most packed audition I had ever been to in my life. And I go, you're never going to get this. Emma Stone is going to get this. That's the point. But I don't know what happens to me when I walk in. I think it's like my competitive nature that just like switches on when I walk in the room, and I get really scary, I think. I wouldn't want to go up against me in an audition room because I'm like, I put off this scary energy of like really intimidating. And it's not a nice energy. It's just, I don't know what it is, but it's like.
So you're Sasha Fierce in the waiting room, or is it once you actually walk into the room? Like it's with the casting?
Everywhere. It's everywhere. I need to be in that zone. It's like a protective thing. I'm a very sweet person in real life, but don't fuck with me in the room. Like it's Michael Jordan. He's not there to make friends. I need to be focused, and I'm razor sharp when I go in, like I'm on a mission.
So I'm so curious in the waiting room. A lot of people have shared some really fun, great things. Adam Shapiro loves to look at his resume when he used to go in the room because I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. I'm a badass. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to kill it. As we're stepping into this zone, are you out there in preparation? Or are you in a mental space? Are you character thinking this through in order to put in that protection to go in and be able to give fully?
I think I try not to hear what's going on because that can really mess up your mental state. If they're laughing too hard and then they're not going to laugh at your joke, or if you're hearing them talking a lot, then you know, oh, they know her, they're going to like her more than me. Like all these things that start affecting, and it's so not important. All that's important right now is that I'm present, committed, fully like immersed in this character and in the story, and just be really present. And what I do, I get really obsessive about the words. So I'll go over the lines in my head and just engrave them. It's like I'm putting them, like I'm cementing them, all the lines and all the little kicks that sometimes don't really flow for me. And then you just go in.
Do you feel like this is your dance background? It's like a count. It's like, da, 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 da. You can hear it over and over again in your head.
It might be. It might be like once you do something over and over again, it just becomes like second nature. And then you can really be open to whatever else is thrown at you in the room.
Yes. So you go into this room. There's a million girls outside. I'm sure they have you do the third scene because they love you. Or do you not know? Like when you leave, are you like, okay, I think I got this? Because how many more steps do we go before they grant you this amazing responsibility?
Wow, so many steps. So Paul Adelstein was in the room. It was like a pre-read with the casting and with Paul. And I walked in. I knew I wanted to play with my look because it was two different characters for those two scenes. So I came in. I went shopping that morning for a pair of glasses because I wanted to have the Superman effect and to show them how different I can look with and without. So I had my hair in a ponytail. I had my glasses on and I did the Belgium accent. And then for the second scene, I just took it off, took my hair down and just sunk into this second scene. And I remember distinctly thinking, this is what's going to set me apart. The first character was married. And so I had a ring on my wedding finger. And right before I got ready for the next scene, I took off my ponytail, took off my glasses, and I said, 1 minute. And I took off my wedding ring, put it down, and then I sunk into the next scene. And I thought it was such a character move. It was all, that show was called My Wife at the time. It wasn't called Imposters yet. And it was all about the sanctity, and I say that quotation mark, of marriage and how quickly the removal of something so physical can turn you into something very different from who you had just pretended to be.
Ooh, character choice and story. I love this. And they obviously loved it.
I don't know if they even noticed it. That's the thing. When I'm in the zone, everything else becomes like smush. You're just there on your own for a minute. So hopefully they did.
I mean, they did because you got it. Obviously.
I got a call back.
You got the callback. So you go back in. And here's the other thing, too, with callbacks. I think a lot of actors seek to repeat. And I feel like you're not somebody who seeks to repeat. So when you go back in for the callback, are you getting more sides? Are you trying to find different ways to discover yourself into the character? Or are you playing the music the same?
I gotta say, it's different in every role. Like sometimes you feel like, I don't really know what else to do with this. They obviously what I did. I don't see any other version of this very short scene, whatever. And you do the same thing, hoping they'll still like it. And that would be enough. And then sometimes they give you notes and you have to come in different. And sometimes you have other ideas that you want to bring in. For me, I like specifically in this case, I can say that I had come in like super confident for the second audition, like knowing I got this. Like I felt the energy leaving the room. I came home and it was like, I looked at the phone and I was like, ring, bitch.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
And then it rang and I got the call and I came in and I was too cocky. This is the truth.
Okay.
I came in too cocky. And I was just like, I was doing everything wrong. The second audition I had was like not great. And then it's just the energy. I was like, I'm telling you, sometimes if you're too cocky, and that's the thing, you have to be careful. There's confident, there's cocky. And no one likes a cocky asshole. You know what I mean?
So what delineates the line between it for you?
I think you can be confident and grateful for the opportunity and also be aware that there are a million other girls out there that can do this job. They might not do it the same as you because everyone's different and you're going to bring your own flair, but that doesn't mean that they can't do it. And that doesn't mean that they won't hire them. So take a breath, be gracious, be grateful, and do your best to do a good job. That's it.
So then if the second scene or the second time going in was more cocky, how did you recover from that? Or do you think that really served its purpose for the character?
So it did not, because I got a call after that callback, and my manager was like, they want to talk to you because you're going back in, but we need to figure this out. And the director wants to talk to you. Adam Brooks, my love and purest, sweetest man in the world, called me. And he was like, listen, we love you. We want this to work. You're coming in for a test. But the last time, I won't lie, wasn't great. And let's figure this out. He gave me some notes and he said, we'll see you tomorrow. And I knew I had to fight for this because there was no way I could continue on living my life knowing I could have gotten this and someone else is playing this role. Like, I wouldn't survive that. And I went to a wig shop that day and I bought the closest thing to looking like normal human hair that can make sense, that would look okay on me, that I could afford at the time. And I bought a wig and I pulled out like something that I thought Saffron Keys, the character, would wear. And that was my chance to do that one scene of Saffron. So a character they haven't seen me do yet. Yeah. And I came into the audition dressed like her, not like me at all. And it was a test day. So it was just me and I think one other girl. And I walked in and the casting was like, can we help you? And I'm like, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. It's me. And they were like, oh. And they were like, oh, okay, sign up. And then they went to call Adam out, and Adam, the director, walked out and saw me, and he looked at me and he just looked at me and he said, go wig or go home. And I was like, that's right, baby. And I was just like in character, fully in character. And when I walked in, like, they asked me different questions and I was fully in character. They were like, so tell us where, who you are and where you're from. And I said, where do you want me to be from? Like, just fully this character who was ready to be whoever they wanted her to be. And that was the role.
And then you got it. I have to ask a technical question because I think that this is such beautiful work. But on the day when you're shooting, you could be jumping between 2, 3, up to 5 characters sometimes. I don't know if you actually did that day to day, but in each season, you're carrying so many different. How are you in the day? How do you switch from character to character? Was there a practice for you to delineate a feeling of, because you're so in movement. So I didn't know if movement was part of it, what part of your senses actually come to life to help you distinguish between Maddie, Saffron, Ava, Cece, Alice, without going a little mad.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of different tools come into play for me. I grew up doing this. When I was a kid, my mom would read us like books before going to sleep. And then I would reenact them in all different characters and voices. And I would jump from one to the next. And we have tapes of this. Like, my dad videotaped me, like, jumping from one character to the next. And I loved doing it. And it came very naturally to me. Obviously, my background in dance has a lot of that. You have to be really fluid and move from one motion to the next in an effortless wave of motion. And my studies at Lee Strasberg Film and Theater Institute really honed in on all different senses, right? And they gave us a lot of tools. I use music all the time. I'll listen to heavy metal when I was working on the show, and I would listen to jazz when I was working on Ava on the show. And different types of music will always set the tone for me, and still does. Physicality, the way she moves. But to be honest, more than anything, I feel like costumes, hair, and makeup really set the tone for me. Like, you move differently when you're wearing cowboy boots or stiletto heels. You sit differently if you're wearing slouchy, baggy clothes or if you're in a pencil skirt. And this show, thank God I had the most fantastic costume designer that we were able to create and custom make each one of the looks. And my hair and makeup team was extraordinary. And we were able to really pull together all these incredible looks. And it just, once it was all set and ready to go, it just flowed.
It did flow. Wow. It flows. So I'm curious, getting up to this Beyoncé moment, because this is a full Beyoncé moment. I love that we've just gone with Beyoncé for this whole entire interview. Oh, it is. Look at the show that you just do. Yeah. And there's Sasha Fierce and all these characters. Getting to that place of having the responsibility of leading a show and us dreaming to do that, us putting the spotlight on ourselves. I would really love to know what were some of the learning lessons or curves to you leading a show, because a lot of actors, we get to this, I want to be a series regular, I'm going to be an ensemble show, I want this responsibility, I want to be Brad Pitt, and then you get it. And what are some of the things you wish you would have known or that you were able to implement to be able to have a very successful 2 seasons? Was it 3 seasons? 2 seasons of Imposters?
That's a great question. I feel like I could give you the watered down answer to that, or I can be really honest. Listen, it was a really tough show because I had a huge responsibility, mainly for myself.
Yeah.
I wanted to do really well. I wanted it to do well for everyone, but I wanted to be really proud of my work in it. And I think I put a lot of pressure on myself. I tried to lead in a kind, gracious way. But at the same time, you have all these characters, you have a lot of responsibility to do a good job and be professional and deliver incredible performances for all of them. But as an actor, you have to protect your craft and you have to fight for what you think will make this better.
Yes.
And I also was for the first time ever presented with a lead role where I have seen fellow actors who I've worked with in the past be in that position and have a lot of say. And I expected to have the same. Yeah. And I think very quickly I learned that you still have to be very gracious and cautious about how you operate on a set, no matter who you are or what your role is. It's a very sensitive place. A set is a sensitive place. There's a lot of money involved and a lot of sensitive people involved. And you can't just say what you want and do what you want and expect what you want. It just doesn't work like that.
I think it's a whole other skill set in learning how to give effective feedback in a creative, collaborative environment. And not all personalities are about a collaboration. And it's like it almost requires a certain level of collegiate level, professional level, philosophical, like psychological level of communication where you can say
it's finesse. That's what it is. And you're so right. And I unfortunately had to learn that the hard way. Sometimes in life, we're like frustrated because, I want to be in that role. I want to get that big job. I'm ready for it. And you're like, why am I not getting it? Because you're not ready and you don't even understand to what extent. And I think I learned a lot of very valuable, harsh lessons on that show on how I need to be better at finesse and finessing my way through creative, maybe disagreements or choices. And I've learned
every part of this is a learning lesson. And I think a lot of people think that they're going to arrive to Hollywood, not that it's Hollywood anymore, and be handed these responsibilities. And there's a process to the ladder, right? There's a process to the stepping stones. It's amazing that you can see your work ethic where you're in the ensemble, right? You're watching it and you're like, now I'm ready for my solo. I'm really ready for my solo. But can you turn down the light a little bit? Oh my God, that's really light. Why is there not more audience? Oh my gosh, I don't like what I'm wearing. Oh God, yeah, I didn't realize being in the spotlight. So there's so much that comes with each level of responsibility to acting. So I so appreciate you just being transparent. Every single project, I think, lends its gifts and learning curves that goes into the next one. And my gosh, if you've never done it before, of course, there's going to be some moments of learning how to communicate. And you did a beautiful job. Look at the piece of art that is there to speak for itself.
My mentor, Carlos Colunga, who taught me at school at Strasberg, he's my coach. He's my private coach. We work together on everything that I have. He's worked with me through Imposters and on Fauda just now and with Lucifer and every audition I have. And he came to me when I was in school and he saw me go through a breakdown. I had a very emotional scene and we were practicing method and I was dealing with all these emotions I had about my mother and channeling it in class. And he saw me like shaking outside in the lobby and he came up to me and he said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, "Be careful." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "It's not for everybody." And other than the fact that I'm absolutely batshit crazy, that if you're not careful and you're pushing all these buttons and there's no one there to help you set them back and send you home with a clear mind and for you to be able to have a good night's sleep, for you to function again on set or in class or just in your day-to-day with your friends and family, then that's dangerous. And I believe in the greatness of this work and art, but I also believe in the importance of your sanity and, your soul. And I think you need to take care of both. And method should be done under supervision and really just take care of yourself while working it.
I'm so glad you said that because I think a lot of actors ask about like a debriefing period. So if you're really practicing a method, I think exactly what you just said is what's the touch points to bring you back? Because sometimes we can go too far and then how do you find yourself and how there's a touch point? And in finding yourself again, can we talk about the full circle moment of Fauda bringing you back to Israel? Like you leave Israel to be an American actress. You're going to do American television and film. And what a beautiful show to then join fourth season and come back to your roots. So I'm so curious. I know you probably can't share too much, but how this full circle moment either came to be, or how does it feel to come back home with a resume
that I didn't have to lie about anymore.
Not at all.
Oh my God, so embarrassing. I can't believe I slipped it.
No, not at all. Hey, Beyoncé, we're going to finish this out. Here's your homecoming. This is your homecoming.
Bring out the trombone. Okay. It was really amazing. I don't know how to answer that question properly. I never saw it coming. Fauda is like the biggest show in Israel of all time. And it's really done some incredible stuff to bridge a lot of chaos. And it was such a privilege to get the call. I have been auditioning for years in Israel and just gave up. That's the truth.
Really? So auditions were going there and you weren't being selected. I always say like selection, not rejection. So there wasn't a selection process that was going in your favor. So then do you think the work of Imposters, the resume built that all of a sudden now, I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. Do you want any of those old auditions? I don't think so. I think I'd much rather land here in your homecoming of Fauda and having them build this show to invite you in to come and play.
Here's the thing, so Imposters, that people don't really know much of it in Israel because it doesn't air on Netflix in Israel. And all of my other stuff that I had done prior to that, yes, Lucifer is a huge show worldwide, but not everyone in Israel watches it. And to be quite honest, the creator of Fauda has never seen my work when they called me in.
How does this land? Yes, land the plane for me.
So this is what happened. We were at my friend's bachelorette party in a hotel in Hollywood, okay? We were at the pool, and Leoraz, who's the creator of the show, walked by. Now, I knew what was happening. I've been there. When you are working on a show and you're away from your home, you are put in a hotel and you have nothing to do. And literally walking outside to get a soda is like the highlight of your day. And then you go back in and you watch TV. Like, I've been there, I've seen it. And I watched him walk and I could see that's the walk. I've done it a million times. And I waved to him. I was like, hey. And he's, hey. And I'm like, come hang out. He's okay. A bunch of hot ladies in a bathing suit by the pool. Sure. He was like, all right, let's do this. And he walked over and I was like, what's your name? And we shook hands. I knew his name. And we introduced everybody. And I said, you're here for the show, right? You're promoting the show. His show had just aired, Hit and Run on Netflix. And he's, yeah, I'm always at this hotel. And I said, yeah, she's getting married. We're here for a bachelorette party. And I offered him grapes. And he said, okay. And I was like, don't go. What do you have going on there? Sit with us, hang out with us. And that was it. Like he remembered me from that. And I added him on Instagram. I did my follow-up. And then they were writing the new season for the show. And one of the characters had another engagement, and they had to find another female character for season 4. And he remembered me. And
no way. And then he makes the call.
And they made the call and they were like, do you want to come in? Like, we want to meet with you. We want to sit with you. There's a role in here for you. And I said, okay, let's see what this is all about. And then when I showed up, I was like, hey, by the way, I have done a million action-packed stuff back in America. And they're like, really? I literally was like, yes. And I YouTubed Inbar Lavi action shit. And I showed it to them in the audition room because no one knew who I was back home. Like, no one.
That is the trippiest experience because I have family in Israel. My ex-husband is Israeli. Now, when I researched you and I watched all of your stuff, I made the assumption she's from Israel. She probably went to the army. And then I found out that you came at 17. And I was like, oh, she must have skipped the army. But she has a lot of experience in action and stuff. That totally makes sense to me. This is so ironic. You left your hometown, and then your homecoming to come back. You have to even show them. And this all happens by chance, by a walk by. This is the full on preparation and opportunity collision at a pool party. Couldn't be more. But also I love your confidence. I love that you've been able to really understand who you are and your worth as an actress, because that's what allows you to have parts that are magnetizing to you. And then for you to be able to do parts like that, you understanding all of the women you play are so confident. I think a lot of women fall into the victim mentality, or they see a role, even your fantastic role in Sons of Anarchy. A lot of people will play the whore in the street, somewhat victim-y, and so your strength always comes through so beautifully in these characters and this dynamic. It's such a joy to see you be able to come back home and be able to show all the talents that you've gleaned out in the world that is so representative of who you are and where you came from. So what a dynamic ride this has been.
Thank you. You're so sweet and so kind to say all those wonderful things. I appreciate that.
I can't wait to see what's next. Where can everybody find you and what's all the great things that are coming out? Can you let us know?
I live on,
yes.
Find me. Listen, Netflix has a lot of my work in it. Very blessed with that. Imposters is one of my favorite works of art that I'm very proud of. That's on Netflix. And Lucifer and Fauda is coming out in January. And Other than that, I guess social media is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
On Instagram. And that's about it.